while President Obama still refusing to call the San Bernardino shootings a terror attack. Take a listen.
It is possible that this was terrorist related, but we don't know. It's also possible that this was workplace related.
Senator Marco Rubio, who's running for president, joins us live right now. What do you make of that?
Well, I understand why he might want to be a bit cautious, but this was not workplace related, other than the fact that the person returned to their workplace and started killing people there. They possessed dozens of pipe bombs, which you don't necessarily go home and build because someone offended you at work. Yeah. My sense of it is these people were clearly planning a broader attack. Maybe there was an incident at work that set them off. He went back and said, let's start it now because I'm upset. But it may have been their original target. Irrespective, I think the evidence is going to continue to show that these were clearly people that had been radicalized and they were planning something broader.
But they wiped their digital footprint clean days earlier. They destroyed their hard drive. They took the motherboards out of their computers. They broke their phones days in advance. They dropped their baby off with grandma an hour or so earlier. Clearly this was in the making.
Yeah, they were clearly planning something. You don't build all these pipe bombs and set up booby traps unless you're planning something. Now, whether it was to specifically attack the workplace or they had something else in mind, I think the evidence is increasingly pointing in that direction.
Of course, but don't you think that this, some would say, measured approach by the president is actually symptomatic of a state of denial that he's in as it relates to radical Islam? Yeah,
but if you watch their reaction initially, when this first came out, without even knowing anything about the case, the first thing they started talking about was gun control and gun control. I don't hear anybody talking about bomb control because they put bombs, they left bombs behind on the scene of attack, intending to kill even more people than they did with the guns. And I think it's symptomatic of the broader issue, and that is an almost hope that none of this is terror related, because he wants this argument to be, we've got this under control. We do not have this under control. It's
contained.
It is not contained, and in fact, every time one of these incidents occurs, it proves that. So you could see in their original reaction, they were hoping this was just another one of these incidents, and instead it's turned into, increasingly likely, a terrorist attack.
And Senator, another part of the problem is the equivocation from President Obama leads to a lot of uncertainty amongst Americans. Even a poll came out recently with Americans saying that homegrown jihadists feel like those are a greater threat than foreign-born. When asked about that, they feel that the homegrown, 58% thought homegrown jihadists were a greater threat than radicalized visitors or terrorist refugees. If you're not calling the threat what it is, how do you quell this concern that we've got an enemy of radical Islamists amongst us?
Well, and in fact, the instincts of the American public are eerily right. They're right on point. The homegrown violent extremist is the biggest danger we face. It is the likeliest way ISIS or Al-Qaeda will attack our country, and it's the hardest to disrupt, because these are not individuals that would have wound up on any database. These two people, these monsters that conducted this terrorist attack, are not people we would have known anything about until they did this.
You know what? As we're learning more about the woman, and there's some suggestion she may have actually radicalized him. They haven't released it yet, but she was here initially on a visa. And as we talk about what to do with the up to 10,000 Syrian refugees who we're going to let into this country, and we're being assured that we're doing all sorts of background checks, they did a background check into this woman. She wound up with this visa, one of those fiancé visas.
Right,
it's a rubber stamp. They knew she was going to overstay, and yet they gave it to her anyway, even though they really shouldn't have.
Well, she would not have wound up on any database, because up to this point she hasn't been involved that we know of in any of these attacks. But I think the bigger challenge here is, yes, she came in on a visa, but her husband was a U.S. citizen, I believe even born in the United States, raised here. And so the point is, think about what a threat that poses. Individuals that have lived among us, grown up here, have never been radical, and suddenly, within a number of months, become not just radicalized, but have decided to turn that radicalism into action.
We have a situation now where instead of focusing on this homegrown terror, it seems, or naming it what it is by the White House and this administration, the focus is on gun control. Does gun control, in your mind, solve this problem?
It doesn't, because first of all, criminals will always have access to weapons. That's why it's important that law-abiding citizens have access to the ability to protect themselves. The other is that California, for example, has very strict gun laws. France has very strict gun laws. Yeah. So the existing gun laws, even all the proposals that the left are putting out, if they were all in place, none of them would have disrupted not just the attack in San Bernardino, but none of these other major attacks we've seen over the last few years in this country, whether they're terrorist related or not. These laws have never been proven to do anything to reduce gun violence.
Senator, what does the president need to be doing, as opposed to pointing to guns right now at this time of great uncertainty with Paris and now California, to not just quell the fears, but really address this threat?
Well, we need to rebuild our intelligence capabilities that have been substantially diminished over the last few years. years because of presidential directives, because of a bill that passed a few months ago that including some Republicans voted for, including people running for president. But beyond it, you must destroy ISIS. You've got to be clear, we are at war with ISIS. We are going to destroy their ability to spew propaganda, to put out their online publication, to inspire people to attack us. We are at war with radical, apocalyptic jihadists, and we need to put an end to their ability to conduct operations or to inspire people to conduct operations. And that is why ultimately we must defeat them. They must be defeated in Syria, in Iraq, in Libya, where they put out this propaganda from.
Let's talk a little bit about the New York Daily News here in New York City. Yesterday they put up a headline after, if we could look at yesterday's headline, we don't have it right there. Today's headline, yesterday they had one up that said, God isn't fixing this. Today they've got a headline that shows the killer, and it said, he's a terrorist. But if we could put it up just for another second longer, it shows a number of mass murderers, and then the guy who runs the NRA, he's a terrorist too.
Well, again, this is typical of what you see in the left-wing media. In fact, they all jumped to this conclusion. They criticized and mocked Republicans and those who talked about prayers and thoughts with a family. You saw that in the headline yesterday. And then they identify someone involved in an organization that I happen to be a member of and have been a member of for a long time as equivalent to terrorists. This is the sort of outrage things that you see from the left. And again, look at what happened within seconds, within minutes of this attack. You had multiple left-wing Democrats, whether they were senators or Hillary Clinton, out there talking about gun control as if somehow it would have done anything to prevent this attack. And there's no consequences for them having been wrong on it. This is a terror attack, and these individuals were plotting to kill as many people as possible, not just with guns, but with pipe bombs. And we need to understand this crisis for what it is. We are at war with radical jihadists.
All right. Senator Marco Rubio, we know you're really busy these days. We thank you very much for stopping by today.
Thank you for your time today, Senator.